Yeah, so one of the main questions I get a lot is, as you're going to doors, I deal with a lot of our land access for whether it's whichever group's out hunting that day. I'm in constant communication with the landowners and making sure that we have areas to hunt on a continual basis. And one of the things that involves is, if you go up to a door, you're going to go try to get permission. Sometimes you're going to cold call people. Sometimes you're going to go cold knock their house. With a lot of farmers, being there in person at the door is a huge thing. But when you get to those doors, it can go a lot of different ways. You can be asked to leave within 5 seconds of being there. You might get invited in for supper. Like you don't know which way it's going to go when you go to that door. Go to enough doors, you kind of start get a feeling for what it's going to be when you start walking up the house, and how the yard looks and everything like that. But no, a lot of times the most common thing you're going to get is no, we're not interested. I have a family member that hunts, and that's going to happen within the first 10 seconds of conversation when they come out of the door. We're in an area where a lot of family members and a lot of locals hunt, and landowners are traditionally very protective of that. And so the biggest thing that I can say when it comes to trying to find a place to guide is being mindful and respectful of that, but also remembering you're there to put on the best hunt you can for your clients. So sometimes you're going to get told no, and you still want to keep that conversation going. And it might turn into you ask about, have your grandkids been out here lately? Like how they've been doing? Have the hunts been good? Do they usually make it out a lot over the weekends or break or anything like that? And suddenly you shift the conversation from being focused on somebody's trying to hunt their ground to talking about their grandkids, their kids. Everybody loves to talk about their grandkids. Everybody loves to talk about their kids. Suddenly now you've opened a door. You're building a relationship and a friendship with them. Because truthfully, it is hard to ask anybody to hunt that doesn't know you or what your company is about, and that you know nothing about them. Because a lot of times there's a reason they don't want hunters out. It's one of those things when somebody first sees somebody on their porch asking for permission, you never know how they're going to take it. You don't know that. And when you can start bringing up family and you can build that connection, that relationship, and kind of shift that perspective of, hey, we're friends. Hey, we're here to socialize. Hey, we're just another group of guys in the area. We're just trying to experience that one good hunt type deal. And you can really start shifting that balance to a conversation. It changes their perspective of their ears are open and ready to listen to what you have to say. And, when they first meet you, their guard's up. They're defensive. They're like, who's at my house? Why are you at my house? I mean, you ever been sitting there, especially if it's a late evening and somebody knocks on your door? Your first thing's not, oh, I'm going to go let them do whatever they want. And so sometimes you have to be prepared to kind of get met with some hostility, try to calm it down, find some neutral ground, and then go back into the conversation that you started. There's always that fine line of like if you get a really firm no, there's a time and a place to walk away. If you can sense that there's some hesitation, maybe there's some unsure on like what it is you offer, or they're worried about how a family member will react. I've had times, we sit there and we call the family member together and talk to them about it. But a lot of times, most of your hunters are weekend warriors, so maybe it's a Wednesday you're going to sneak out and hunt. Maybe it's a Thursday morning. Maybe it's just one day for the year. Trying to explain to them your true end goal versus their true, goal for the property. Because at the end of the day, if a landowner can both be cash flow positive from hunting, but also let their grandkids out, their family out, it's a win-win for everybody. And so it's just kind of a matter of how do we put their mind at ease and show them that we're not here to try to screw up something they have going. We're here to add value to their land, to them. And so that's kind of just trying to find that balance right off the get-go.
I like that. So have you had any situations where you got that no, and maybe it was for the season, like you got the no, but now, maybe it was 3 years ago when y'all first got started, It was a no,
Absolutely.
but now
I've got
it's all
people I get the
y'all's.
same no from every year on repeat, about the same day on the calendar. I show up, we have the same conversation, and they laugh. But, I also have a lot of them that say, come back next year and check again. Maybe the person who's hunting out there won't still be. And so there's a lot of them, and way more than I can count, that literally invite you back next year, even though they say no, because in their mindset it's, well, if, Farmer Joe quits working for us, and so he's no longer hunting out there, I might as well make an income off this. Or you guys are next in line, or, I've got places where they're leased out for now, but if the lease doesn't get renewed, then it goes to us. And so just kind of touching base every year helps a lot. And the biggest thing to keep in mind is if somebody tells you no, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a really good thing, because if you can walk away with a new connection, especially if it's in a different region and you have their phone number to call at a different day, maybe they're going to say, hey, Billy farms that field that you're looking at. Why don't you give him a call at this number? And so it's not always about getting the permission when you go in there and try to have that discussion.
Mm.
A lot of times it's about building a connection in the area. They might tell you somebody else to go talk to. They might give you a phone number. They might, give you some insight into something that you don't know. You might even get a scouting report that you didn't know. Maybe they hunt and that's why you can't hunt. But they go, hey, Jim down the road, he's very open to day leasing. Why don't you go talk to him? I've seen a bunch of birds in his field. And maybe you couldn't see them because you can't see them unless you drive back in the field to see over the hill. And, there's stuff like that too that you can walk away and get a no and still walk away with a win. And so that's always a big, big factor when you're taking those no's is, sometimes even if they say no, you might hang around another 30 minutes and socialize just to build a connection in that area. And then if something does change down the road, you're first in line to get a hunt there because they now know who you are, what you do, and you've got a relationship built there, an entrance into that door.
Yeah, one stat that I heard a long time ago and I thought was really interesting is that the average landowner income, whether it be farm or landowners across the country, the average profitability is negative $1,200 every year.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned cash flow positivity is like, a lot of the ones that probably do lease to you guys see that as an opportunity. Is like, hey, this is a way to make a little extra money, right? Like they think about it like that.
There definitely is. And, I see it more so, especially with your older family farms. And the big thing you run into there is a lot of them have kids, grandkids, somebody that hunts. But if you can show you're willing to work with them on that, but they still can make an income, a lot of leases don't work that way. A lot of individuals who want a spot to put a permanent blind for the season, it doesn't work that way. So if you can give them a way that they can both make money but also keep their family happy, that's a huge thing for them.
How do y'all work with, and Hunter, I think you've touched on it in the past a little bit, but, how do you guys work with those situations where, maybe they're not coming out and hunting with clients? I'm sure that happens every now and then. But what is y'all's philosophy there?
Yeah, no, we definitely have a lot of people who come out and hunt, whether it's family, whether they come with us. A lot of times you got kids that hunt out there. I mean, we've got places where they've got permanent blinds out there. You're hunting off of that when it's slow. And truthfully, sometimes that can be the best because I've got some guys that hunt and they'll shoot me a text like, hey, I was in the deer blind this morning. A lot of geese flying this stretch of the river. Why don't you guys get out here tomorrow? And when you've got somebody who does waterfowl hunt and does understand what they're seeing and what it's looking like, and they know it's going to be a good hunt, that can work out really well. But the big thing that I've come to learn is, we're trying to shoot an 8-man limit of birds most days, and a lot of these locals are trying to shoot a one to 3-man. Like that's all they're after. Right. And so on a lot of these quality spots, they can do that rather consistently. But when they know it's extra loaded, that's when they'll call us and say, hey, why don't you guys sneak out there for a few days on the peak of season, and then we'll go back to doing what we do, the rest of the season. But if we can hit those spots on those key days, I've had guys where even, maybe they lease the ground out from the farmer, and when I talk to them and the farmer, it's like, hey, I'll throw money towards their lease and to the farmer if you let us out there for that day. And so suddenly it's a win for the guy that's hunting out there, it's a win for the farmer, and it can all work out really well.
So one question I've always kind of had, I hear people throw around like leasing property for the year or the season, and then there's people that are day leasing. How do you go about making that decision? I know there's probably factors from the farmer themselves, but if it's kind of like either or, how do you decide on what you're going to do?
A lot of the either or for us, at least when I'm talking with the farmers, is do we want to put permanent blinds out there? Because the instant you put a permanent blind out there, you're putting a lot of money and a lot of time into making the place huntable. You're doing a lot of land management work. And when you start doing that, you really want to be able to let that place rest as much as possible. And so you're not necessarily paying for the season to be able to hunt for the season as much as you're paying for it to be able to rest when you need it to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when you start thinking about places that are going to need a lot of time to rest to make them really quality spots, that's a lot of times where that transition becomes to come in. And it also just depends. Like there's a lot of scenarios where if family members want to hunt, I don't even want to begin the discussion of a full year lease because it's not going to work well. But then you look at something like turkeys or something in that area where you need a lot. That's a whole different conversation because if you have 4 guys going into a place when turkey numbers are low and shooting toms, your population's not going to do well. And so
Hmm.
you need to have some sort of a balance on management. But when you start looking at the management, discussing with the landowner how they've done things in the past out there, what is their future plans, as far as allowing hunters in, that's when you start really coming to that judgment decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. My next question is actually more towards Hunter, but kind of going off that, I guess. But Hunter, how do you go about budgeting for the year to be able to lease this ground and knowing like, hey, we want to expand and get more property? So Justin, I guess, are you going and getting this, permission, and then y'all are budgeting into it, like, okay, at this date we're going to start paying for this lease, or do y'all already have allocated money and y'all just go scoop up as much land as possible?
Well, it depends. I mean, we set a budget. Obviously, we're like, well, we want to spend X amount of money on leases this year. But we more go off hunts. So, like, for example, Bob picked up a really good property this year that we didn't think we were going to pick up. It's costing us a lot more than it should. Like, than we would normally pay for this amount of acres. But the property is that good, and we're going to get 8 hunts a week off his 5,000 acres or 7,000 acres, which makes it 8 hunts a week. And if we're running doubles, if you're running doubles, you got to have 6 hunts every 3 days. You got to have 12 hunts a week. Well, hell, if you can get 8 from 5,000 acres in a general area, all of a sudden you can get a couple from the Platte River, a couple from whatever, and you're good for that week. Granted, you're not always going to get 8. You're not out. You might have a shitty day. Things change. So we look at our permanence leases we want to have enough permanent properties to where we could have 12 hunts a week. And then after that, we could go find day leases for when those properties aren't performing. So that's kind of how you set the budget. But it also turns back to what Justin creates, what he comes up with when he goes out. That actually kind of leads me to my question for him is Justin, when you go scouting like this, when you go on these adventures, it's not a 2-hour adventure. It's not a 1-day adventure. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. Expand on that.
Yeah, so like during the summer, especially in the off seasons, that's truthfully when it becomes the most critical to go talk to these farmers, go talk to these landowners. And the big thing is, like, if you're trying to find them in October, it's heart risk. You try to find them early in the year, it's planning, it's not going to happen. And then during season, you're going to talk to a lot of guys during season. You'll make a lot of connections, but not like in the off season. When guys are irrigating, their schedules are pretty set. It's pretty easy to figure out where you're going to find these farmers. And one of the big things that I look for is just knowing everybody in the area. Like, it's not always a matter of who has the best ground or who has the worst ground. A lot of times it's just knowing them. And so if you have everybody's phone numbers and everybody's personal relationships in an area, that can help a lot. But then, as season starts getting closer and closer, you're starting to say, okay, I felt like last year we struggled more, for instance, in the late season when we didn't have warm water. Or maybe I struggled more in the early season when we didn't have enough farm ponds. Whatever it is where you feel like you were lacking the most the year before, you're going to go, okay, who controls, this area? Who do I need to talk to that could help us get, 3 or 4 more warm water spots that might get us through this year when it was tough, so that when you get into those positions in the year, you already have those connections. And so trying to basically think, if I was scouting, where would I go look at that point of the year, and then going and targeting those guys. And, a lot of times the summer, a big thing that's very undervalued is going out and walking all the properties that you're going to hunt in the winter, finding access trails, finding how you're going to go in there, how are you going to hunt this. Maybe there's new ground that you've had permission on, but not everybody knows how to get down into it. So, like where we run doubles, making sure one guy in each group at least knows the access roads into every property. And so that's one of my favorite parts about the summer. You can kind of schedule a time with a landowner, like, hey, why don't we find a day that you're off and we'll spend it together, kind of socializing, getting to know each other, and we'll go through some of the access roads on these properties. And that goes a long way as far as respect goes with a landowner too, because they know you're not driving all over hell through a pasture. They know you're not going to tear something up. You're going to park where they want you to park. You're going to drive where they want you to park, and they're going to be on the whole same page as what you have going. Because communication with a landowner, you can't be too blunt, you can't be too direct. You need to give them every detail you can about the number of guys you're going to have, where you're going to drive, how you're going to set up, how you're going to clean up after yourself, how you're going to make sure you don't have issues. And then when you do have issues, because inevitably if you hunt enough throughout a season, you're eventually going to get a truck stuck. You're going to get something tore up. You're going to park in the wrong spot. You're going to slide off the road and knock out an electrical fence. Like, something's going to happen. What are you going to do when that does happen? And so if you can have those conversations with them during the off season and spend a day or two with them and really just build that relationship, they know that, hey, I don't have to worry about him forgetting to shut a gate, because if he does and the cows get out, they're going to deal with it and they're going to call me and let me know, and we're going to get it fixed. Because at some point, something's going to go wrong. Being blunt with them about that, like, hey, we might run 90 hunts a year and we might have 2 where something goes majorly wrong. But at some point, if somebody slips up, you need to know that they can rely on you to take care of that.
So piggyback off that, Justin, it's December, right? We're going to go run a goose hunt or a duck hunt. The night before the hunt, we just got the scout done, right? We're in the field. We just looked at the field. We know exactly where we want to hunt. We already know we can hunt out there. We just got to talk to them. What's your communication plan from the soon as we find the scout until we step foot in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So that can all vary with landowners, each one. It depends on how tech savvy they are and how much, whether they are or not. No matter what, it starts with a phone call and explaining what's going on, where we're planning to hunt, how we're planning to access it. And then the biggest thing I've learned is always ask if there's a better way to get there, because half the time they know there's a closer gate that you didn't see, especially if it's in the evening scouting. A lot of times they've got a better access plan in mind than you do. And so communicating that with them is huge. But then one of the biggest things that I've found is, whether you get on iMessage and draw or on X and draw, whatever, but literally drawing like, hey, this is where I'm going to park, in a line through the field of like, hey, I'm going to follow this field road and go down this way. Like, especially if it's a longer access spot, then you can send it over to them and they know where you're planning to drive, which can be different. If you're hunting a dry field, a lot of times nobody really cares. If you're hunting like a farm pond, they don't want you driving through all their tall grass, especially if it's been dry like it's been lately. Fire hazard's a major thing in our area, especially if it's going to be windy and dry. And so knowing, hey, I'm going to take this cow pasture road that they take to the water tank, and then we're going to walk in from here or whatever. That gives these guys a lot of peace of mind and can get you side-by-side access where you would normally never have it. Because they don't want just anybody driving a side-by-side through their pasture if you don't have a good plan of where you're going when it's dry. I mean, because to them, that just becomes a giant risk that's not worth the money. It doesn't matter what you're paying at that point. If they think you're going to burn down several miles of pasture, nobody wants you out there. And so anything you can do to give them peace of mind is huge.
That's awesome, honestly. Like, I feel like I'm learning so much right now.
Me too.
I kind of wanted to transition a little bit into the kind of like project management role that you play, because you've got a lot of stuff going on in the off season. You have all of these farmer responsibilities, but you're also managing the manual labor projects that you have going on out there. So how do you balance that during the off season? I imagine that I personally know our property manager at our farm. He struggles to get all of those projects done, right? But he doesn't have a system to go about it. So how do you balance all that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, to say the least. But one of the biggest things that I've found is, one, we have a great team of guys. Sam, he's taking care of things that I couldn't even dream of. And you got a group of guys that are always willing to help. But the biggest thing in managing my personal time schedule is with my role is, if I'm going to go hit doors, and we've got a lot of land management, that we're doing in different areas. If I know I'm trying to go hit, a certain area of doors, but I also have a land management project in that area, I might go work on it till 9, 10 a.m. and then I might go hit doors, or I might go work on it for most of the morning, go get some lunch, kind of hang out for a minute, and then go hit some doors in the evening. Because depending on what type of time of year you're exactly looking at, because if they're irrigating, you're not going to find them first thing in the morning because they're out changing gates, everything like that. So I'm going to be doing our management project, because I really believe in talking to most people in person, especially in the off season if you can. And so one of the best things and best ways I found to do that is you kind of just show up. And so if you can catch them when they're working in the shop, well, in the heat, as it gets hot past 2 o'clock in the afternoon, people are going to be rolling back to the house to kind of relax. They're going to be working in shop projects. They're not going to be out in the fields as often, unless they got to pivot down or something like that. And if that's the case, you don't want to talk to them anyways that day. They're going to be in a mood. You just stay out of there. It ain't worth it. You ain't going to accomplish nothing. So get your stuff done while it's cool out. Then when it's hot out, at the same time they're going back to the farm, that's when you go back and you start really trying to have those conversations.
So you said there's certain things you can read them, right? There's certain times to not approach a farmer.
Yeah.
And especially even farmers that we have land leased from, places we're doing project management. There's certain ways to approach wanting to do project management. There's certain ways to approach farmers that you want to lease from. There's certain times not to. What are those?
Yeah, that's a whole wide genre, but one of the big things I'll say is I don't like stopping people when they're in the tractor. If you're in the tractor and you're trying to get stuff done, let them be. I don't care what you need to talk to them about. Let them do what they're doing, because the instant you make them have to pull over that tractor or stop that tractor, especially if they're trying to beat a rain coming, they're trying to beat the humidity, whatever they're trying to beat. If you have to stop in that field, the instant they get out of that tractor, they're going to be pissed. All
Mm-hmm.
shots of asking for a favor, asking for something, go out the window. It ain't
Hmm.
worth it. Same thing goes if a guy's got cows out. Best thing I can say is if you know them well, help them. If you don't know them, let them have some space, because they may not be in a mood. You might park your truck where the cows aren't going to run down the road. You might do whatever, but don't get in the way. You get in the way, things are going south. But I'll give a little bit of a story here. I went up to a place to go talk to them about turkey hunting, and pull in. They're in the middle of working cows, and I didn't see them when I got in there. One of those things, you drive in a mile-long driveway, you don't know until you get there. You get in there, I'm walking around the farm, I'm looking all over. Well, at this point, they've all seen me wandering around the farm like a lost idiot, and they're sitting there working cows, and it's like, well, now you've been here, you've been wandering around, now you do have to approach them. So being mindful, if a guy's working cows, you don't want to move through that pen fast. You don't want to move through a pen to go talk to him that you don't know what's going on in. So kind of trying to move slow, kind of, hand gestures that I'm trying to move around this pen that way. Does that work with you? Like, last thing you want to do if a guy's sitting there trying to give cattle shots is accidentally get somebody stabbed with a needle. That ain't gonna end good. Ain't gonna end well for anybody. And so when you do get in those situations where you do have to have those conversations at that moment, just being as respectful as you can be, moving, honestly, as weird as it sounds, just moving slow. You don't want to be running around. You don't want to be moving fast. Just slow, confident, and just as much big smiles you can put on, and whatever jokes you can crack when you get there. Start doing something, because the mood ain't going to be great when you walk up. So you're gonna have to try to make it realize that you're a friend, not the guy to be mad at.
Well, Justin, one thing I wanted to understand. So y'all have so many people that work at Whiskey Sloughs. What made you that guy? What made you the land guy?
Bob can
I think
talk.
it's just, what's that?
I said Bob can talk.
Yeah, I do like talking.
He gets it.
Not really scared to go up to the doors. It's just, I enjoy it so much talking to all the farmers. I like it a little too much. I can get stuck there for a few hours if I'm not careful, and the next thing I know, we're sitting around a fire or something BSing all night. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy socializing with them. And the thing is, the more you're present in an area, and the more you meet all the different farmers, you almost get to go share farm gossip. Like who's getting what for yield, who's shutting their wells off, and what. And you go start BSing like that, and it makes for a lot of fun combos, but it just makes things go pretty smooth.
Another one I wanted to hear is there any time where you can pay a farmer to get the hunt on it without cash? Like whether it's a gift, some form of labor, anything like that, or have y'all ever done anything like that where it's not just
Absolutely.
cash?
Absolutely. One of our leases this year, we're paying for by helping with a bunch of construction work. Guy was getting a little bit older, and he's got a project that's just too much for him. And he's in the middle of doing a complete remodel on this building. It is awesome. I mean, it's just gorgeous. The guy, he's a heck of a carpenter, but he needed a couple guys that can lift some heavy beams. I mean, he's got 12 by 12 beams coming in that are, 800
Mm-hmm.
pounds. You can't move those by yourself. And so he doesn't really trust many people to go on his property. He really doesn't want a lot of people to see it. So he's kind of, if you guys can come help me out, we'll cut you a deal, and we'll work some stuff out on the lease. And we start helping with projects, and suddenly the talk of what we're going to pay goes away. Just it really helps in certain scenarios where you'll find, especially a lot of the older farmers, they need help with things that they can't do anymore, and they don't have reliable help. And sometimes that's worth more to them than money is to come have some help for a few days. And so the other big thing I can say is when you're working with farmers, especially if you do a lot with that farmer, asking them, hey, you need some help this summer. Hey, do you need some help, moving cows? You call me. We'll bring a crew out for the day and we'll help. Like, whether or not they take you up on that offer, those offers go a long ways with them. Or, we've had a time, we were driving down the road, guy had cattle out. We tried to get him back in, called him, said, hey, we got him back in. Here's the issue, where the fence was. We're going to kind of hang out here until one of you guys get here to fix it. Like, and just trying to help out where you can goes miles. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've called while driving around talking to landowners this year that, hey, you got a couple cows out. Do you want me to try to get them back in? You want me to wait here? Like, what do you want? Because the thing you got to remember is no matter what you want to get done that day, maybe we want to go get cattails cut. Maybe we want to go get trees cut, whatever it is, nothing is more important than those landowner relationships during that day. Because you lose your landowner, you lose your ability to run a business. And so if they need help at that moment, it's something serious, you drop what you're doing and you help. And that just goes miles with them when it comes to ask for a favor. Maybe you want to ask to do management projects down the road. Maybe you want to flood a cornfield, whatever. Having helped them and showing that you're not out for yourself, you're out there for a partnership goes a long ways with it.
Yeah, I love all those points. There's something I've heard from a couple different outfitters, and I wanted to get y'all's opinion on it. And so what it is that outfitters that can afford it, sometimes they'll lease as much land as possible just to help keep competitors out of their area. How do y'all feel about that approach? Do you think it's ethical, not ethical, not worth the amount of money it costs to do something like that?
I personally, I don't think that's necessarily the best route to go. I think that's how you burn a lot of bridges with a lot of locals. Yeah, it creates a safety net for you, but pushing locals out, not always a great thing. We run most of ours kind of the direct opposite. We want to cover as much ground as we can, but we still want to let all the local guys hunt. We still want to let all the local kids hunt because there are next generations of waterfowlers. There's the next generation that are going to be booking hunts. You want to keep waterfowl clients coming for years to come. You don't do it by telling everybody they can't hunt because when you start out waterfowl hunting, you don't have the ability to go lease a lot of ground. You don't have the ability to spend all this on decoys. I mean, I look at back when we were in high school, like you didn't have that stuff. And so by forcing everybody out, by leasing everything up, you just burn a lot of bridges with a lot of locals. And that, it gets you a lot of access, gets you a lot of permanent access. But if you have that relationship with locals that you're going to take care of them, you're going to take care of their families, you're going to be there to help them, they aren't going to let your competition in. You don't have to have permanent leases on everything to keep the competition out. Relationships go a long ways. I have a lot of our landowners that'll call me if somebody's trying to lease ground, just even for fun, and they'll be like, "What's your opinion on it?" And, there's times I've told them, "Hey, man, I've hunted that place once this last year. They're willing to pay you good money for it. Let them in." Because at the end of the day, I want to see the farmers make good money too. And so there's a time and a place where, you got to just kind of work with everybody. But if you have those relationships with them, they're going to call you. They're gonna work with you. There's better ways to keep people out than trying to lease everything.
Yeah, I got a fun tactical question, and then I gotta run it too. But y'all are welcome to keep it going. Talk to me about deal making and negotiation with farmers. Do you have the leeway, or you got to call a hunter to like close the deal? Like, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so when I go out, we kind of have criteria that we've set as far as, what we do day wise. But when you start talking year lease, everything changes during the whole conversation very fast based on, what management you want to get done, because you're going to have to pay them more if you want to work more ground, if you want to cut more trees. You got to balance all that out with what the landowner wants. And so a lot of times we'll go into it. Hunter we'll talk about property a long time before I go talk to him. And he'll kind of just say, "Hey, here's where I'm comfortable paying up to this amount. If it goes above that, we'll kind of I'll be talking with the landowner. I'll be like, "Hey man, I'm not authorized to go that high. Why don't we continue this conversation a different day?" And we'll kind of continue that conversation running. But a lot of times that break in communication allows them to think about your offer a little bit more too. And so sometimes that can help you out too, as they start looking at it and going, "Well, maybe that much is okay," or, "Well, maybe that much is okay if you cut some trees for me or do some yard work for me, or, help me out with some projects that I don't have time for." And so sometimes walking away for a little while can be your best advantage that you have. There's never a need to rush into agreeing to a lease right on the spot right away. Usually it just ends you up with a bad deal because you just get excited and you just want to hunt. And so really taking a step back to process that can be good for both you and them.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Kind of going off of that, when it is, you have places that you can day lease and you got a group of people, you got two options maybe to hunt. The day lease is a little bit, looks like you're going to get to kill a little bit more birds, but you have one that you year lease that looks like you'd still have a decent hunt. How do you go about weighing the odds on spending the bigger chunk on the day lease compared to the year lease, or is it just like, hey, whatever's going to be the best?
You want to answer that, or you want me to?
It's just the best hunt, man. It don't
Yeah,
matter it don't
we,
matter if
we
it's going to be the one that costs the most or the one that we have forever. Whatever's the best hunt on the scout.
we budget so much for day leases a year that if we didn't hunt our permanent leases very much, we'd still be fine. And so
Mm.
when it comes down to it, it's, let's put on the best hunt. Like you said, if there's a bunch of birds on your permanent lease, let them sit a day or two. There's probably going to be a bunch more,
Build
and
it.
it'll be a better hunt in 2-3 days. It'll all balance out in the end. The biggest thing is you want your clients on the best hunt. You want your clients the happiest they can be. You want to give them that one hunt, that they're going to remember for the rest of their life. And if that means, you're spending a little bit extra on day lease for the year, you do it, because it'll come back tenfold when it comes back to rebookings the next year. It'll come back every single time and help balance out in the future. But in the present, you got to take care of your crew. You got to take care of them.
Yeah, I like that. Hunter, Logan, Justin, do y'all have any other topics that y'all think we should cover in this? I feel like I've learned a lot just from this 30-minute podcast so far.
I was going to say we have covered the basis of most of Justin's job, and it's covered real well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to keep going and give away any of the really tactical secrets or anything like that. But Justin, you did a really good job, man, explaining that. And again, I feel, even for me, who doesn't fully understand all the work that goes into it, I have more respect for the role in itself, like how much work actually goes into doing that. But yeah, I don't know if you have any kind of last minute advice for anyone who's maybe nervous to go up and start doing this, a new guide, starting a new business, and they've never done something like that,
The
kind of
best
how to
piece
get their feet wet.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I ever got when it came to door knocking was, before I ever knocked a door in my life, my uncle told me, he goes, the worst they can do is say no. And as long as you remember that, the worst they can do is tell you, hey, no, it's not going to work. And 99% of the time, they're going to be very nice about it. There's never a reason to be scared to go up and ask. There's never a reason to walk away. I mean, I really don't care what the house looks like, what the place looks like. Most of the nicest guys you meet are at some of the houses that look like you probably wouldn't door knock them. The worst they can do is say no. Just be nice, be respectful.
Yep.
Love it.
I think that's awesome advice. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one, man. But yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and sign off here. Thank y'all for listening to the GuideTech Podcast, episode number 24 with Justin, the farmer whisperer. Awesome job, Justin. I really enjoyed that. So if you enjoyed this, make sure to share it with anyone else, anyone that's a guide or potentially just a scout that works for other outfitters. Take these tactics, utilize them. I know they'll help you out. I've seen Justin and the guys at Whiskey Slews be super successful off of these. And we'll see you here next week on the GuideTech Podcast. See you guys.